What's up guys, Sawyer here with Utah Airguns. Today we are talking about scopes again, but this one's kind of special because Element has released a new scope and it is the Gen 2 version of the Helix. Now the Helix was developed 5 years ago. It served a lot of you guys very faithfully. The goal with the Helix was they wanted to kind of bridge the gap between performance and affordability. And the Gen 1 Helix did that really well. It gave you a lot of features that normally come in higher end scopes, but some of those compromises you have to make when you buy an affordable scope were a little apparent. It was a very high performing scope, but with the Gen 2, they killed it. You guys know that I'm a huge glass snob. I'm not completely exclusive to Element because I like to, know about all the other scopes. I own a lot of scopes, and this scope, for the price point that it's coming in, is extremely, extremely impressive. So let's dive right in. So it's gonna come in the super nice Element packaging. So we'll pull this off. You got a nice little cover there. You get your Element Optics sticker, your lens cloth, your scope caps, your little aperture ring, which is pretty cool. I don't know of any other scope companies that do that. You get your beauty ring for your windage, some Allen wrenches, a small throw lever, and a sunshade. Pretty standard as for what everything comes with. And you get the scope, and you get the rubberized scope cover there too. So let's move all this aside and start talking about this scope. One of the biggest improvements that I still don't know how they can afford to do this at this price ranges, but they used German glass. So you are getting an extreme optical performance upgrade with the Helix Gen 2. It is very impressive. I've spent some time behind this scope. I'll take it out in low light, I'll go take it out in normal daylight, and I'll look into shadows, just stuff like that. See how it cuts mirage. Just everything you do when you're buying a high-end scope, checking the performance claims that they do, and this is very, very impressive. I'm super impressed with the clarity already. So with that German glass, you get better edge-to-edge clarity. You're not getting that chromatic aberration around the edges when you kind of zoom in and out. You get just good clarity and consistency throughout the magnification range. Like I said, I'm just gonna keep saying I'm impressed with it. I'm not trying to shill the scope, but for the money, this thing is crazy. The next thing that they did is they really upgraded the turret system. I'll put this by my mic so you can hear the clicks. That was my wrist. But no, the clicks, they did some serious improvement on. And clicks aren't just like a superficial thing. Like if a scope has nice, loud, crispy clicks, that means it's good, it has good tracking. Because what's happening in your erector is when you're twisting the turret, it has threads and it's lifting that erector up and down, moving your crosshairs. And what the clicks are doing is each click is a very precise fraction of that rotation of that erector, thread that's lifting it up and down. So the more precise and consistent your clicks are, the less slop they have in them, the better tracking you're gonna have. So when you have like really just hard, tactile, audible clicks, that means that tracking is super consistent and robust. So when you have clicks like this, your tracking is going to be on point. So let's take this turret off and I'll show you why it was such a good upgrade over the Helix Gen 1. So they went with a full stainless steel erector turret system. In the old one, it had some brass components, which they still work, it's still tracked really good, but they wear out a little bit faster over time. With this, the wear and tear will be negligible. The tracking is to 1%, so there's a 1% error, which is extremely precise for a scope of this price. That was one of the major upgrades, and that is one of the upgrades that I am very excited about too, because obviously if your scope doesn't track, you could put this on a $10,000 rifle, but if the scope doesn't track, it's just gonna be super frustrating because your gun's shooting super good groups, your data could be tracking really well, but if the scope isn't doing its job, it's awful. So good tracking on a scope is a must, and they did a major upgrade for the Gen 2. The next upgrade they did was it's capped windage now. And that's something that I really like on my scopes because I'm not adjusting windage all the time. Wind changes and I'd much rather hold in the reticle. And two, the turret on the Gen 1 wasn't locking. So you could bump it and accidentally bump your windage. And then if you're not constantly checking zero, you could have a bad day, missing a shot and realizing that something has spun your windage trip. But for the people that do, I know like some bench rest guys, some target shooter guys like to dial windage. you also get the beauty ring. So it's just a small threaded piece that threads over the threads on the scope, so that, you know, you don't have exposed threads and now you have an exposed windage turret. So it kind of caters to both ends of the windage turret spectrum. So that's a nice little upgrade. Another upgrade they added to the turret system is you get 20 MOA and 8 mils per revolution on the turret, as opposed to much less on the Gen 1. So that's really nice. So you're not, you know, you're not going shooting a relatively short shot, but, you know, going past a full revolution on your turret. You're not even getting close to that now. So that's a feature that a lot of high-end scopes have. You can get up to really high elevation without doing even a full revolution on your turret. So that's nice. The next upgrade is on the parallax knob. And some of you that have Helixes will know that the parallax knob on the Gen 1 was smaller diameter and it was kind of stiff. It was a little bit harder to turn. That's not like a deal breaker, but it's one of those things that's nice when you're in position. You know, you don't have to break position and, like, you know, really crank on your parallax. But on this one, they increased the diameter, made it a lot smoother. You're getting a lot more for your money with this scope. Everything just feels a lot more high end than you've paid for. I still can't believe. I'll get to the price in a little bit. I want to build some anticipation. So on the eyepiece, they upgraded it to have a lot more adjustment in it, so that, you know, you guys that have some really funky eyes, Justin, this scope will accommodate. You'll still be able to get a really crispy reticle, and you won't have to be compromising with either having a slightly blurry picture or a slightly blurry reticle. The diopter on here can accommodate. So now that I've kind of built the anticipation of the price, this scope is going to come in at around 560 bucks, which is insane for kind of as much effort that went into the turrets, the high quality materials, stainless steel kind of click and erector system. You're getting German glass. It's just a super impressive scope coming in at under 600 bucks. Like there's some scopes that I've ran that have, you know, less tactile turrets and worse glass for around $1,000. This scope would be perfect for you guys that are wanting to get into like a good solid budget setup, even on a centerfire, whether air rifle or centerfire. This is going to give you that super precise tracking. You're going to get some really high quality glass. You're just getting a lot of the high-end features at a lot more affordable price. And it's been really cool to see the advancement of scopes over the years. I've been into precision optics for probably just a little over 10 years now. And, you know, a lot of you have been in this game a lot longer than I have, but just in those 10 years, there's been massive improvements. And since I've been working with Utah Airguns and Element Optics, they've been making improvements just in that short time. So it's really cool to see the advancement and how much quality and performance they can pack into a scope of this price. We're getting into a time where obviously price does reflect quality, but those margins are kind of shrinking. Usually it used to be like, you know, a $500 to $600 scope was miles less quality than, you know, a $2,000 scope. But those budget scopes are shrinking with the improvement of technology. So you don't really have to worry now when you're getting into a scope like this that, you know, I only spent 500, 600 bucks on my scope. It's not going to perform like I want it to, but that performance is just growing every time they release a new scope, and this scope is a perfect example of that. So guys, that is the Element Helix Gen 2. This is the 6 to 24. There are other magnification ranges coming soon, so be on the lookout for that. But I'll just reiterate, this scope has extreme performance for the money. I'm super impressed with it. Again, I'm a huge optics snob. I have all the brands and I run them all. I like to have experience with them all. And this scope is, I can honestly say, without, you know, put my work with Utah Airguns and everything aside, my hobby is precision rifles and precision optics outside of work. And I would absolutely, and I will absolutely be buying a Helix Gen 2 just to have it and be able to show people that, you know, that you can get really high performance glass and tracking for under $1,000. So yeah, this is a great scope. And I'm super excited for you guys to be able to get into a high-end optic without doing a massive investment, because down the road, this scope will get you addicted and you'll eventually buy a Theos or other high-end glass. So super excited about this scope. But yeah, guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video, and we'll see you on the next one.